Welcome to Ancient Wisdom. My name is Socrates, and tonight I am going to talk about Anaximenes of Miletus, the quiet philosopher who believed that air is the breath of the world, and that from it all things are born. He was among the first of those who dared to ask not what the gods desired, but what the world itself was made of. In the harbor city of Miletus, where winds carried the scent of salt and spice, he listened to the whisper of the air. Others before him had spoken of water or of the boundless void, but Anaximenes said, "It is air that holds all things together. For as our soul, being air, sustains us, so too breath and air encompass the whole world." He saw in the smallest breath the greatest mystery, that the invisible gives life to the visible. And so, as we begin, I ask you to notice this gentle truth. Each breath you take connects you to everything that has ever lived. The same air that brushes the olive leaves tonight once touched the faces of our ancestors. It has circled mountains, crossed seas, entered kings and beggars alike. It has known birth and death, yet remains unchanged, eternal, unseen, and endlessly moving. When I speak of Anaximenes, I do not speak of cold reasoning or distant study. I speak of a man who looked at the simplest thing, the air around him, and saw the divine in it. He lived in a time when wisdom was young, when men walked to the edge of their knowledge and peered into wonder. To them, the world was alive, not dead matter but breathing spirit. As you listen tonight, let your own thoughts drift like clouds across an open sky. You need not follow every word, for wisdom is not caught by the mind alone. It is felt as wind is felt on the skin. Imagine the world of Miletus, the sea gleaming under the sun, sails trembling in the breeze, fishermen calling to one another, children chasing gulls through the sand. Above them all, the invisible air moved, the unseen sculptor of their days. It was in that same air that Anaximenes found his truth, that the universe itself breathes just as we do. When you grow still enough to listen, you may feel it too. That quiet pulse behind all sound, the soft rhythm that binds you to the sky. So rest your mind now. Let your breath become slow and deep. And as we drift into the story of this ancient seeker, remember, what he discovered in the air is not far from you, for it flows within you at this very moment. Tonight, I will tell you how he saw the heavens move, how he found unity in wind and soul, and how his gentle thought became the beginning of all philosophy, the search for what lies beneath all things. But for now, simply breathe. Let the night surround you calm and wide. Let the air, the same eternal air that carried the words of Anaximenes, cradle you in stillness. For in this stillness, wisdom begins. I remember walking once along the coast of Ionia, long after Anaximenes had lived, and feeling the same sea breeze that must have brushed against his face. Miletus lay quiet before me, a city of bright marble and murmuring waves, its harbors filled with ships from every corner of the known world. There was a hum in its air, a music of trade and talk, of ideas carried across the waters. It was a city that breathed thought as naturally as men breathe air. Miletus was no ordinary place. It was the meeting point of worlds, where the wisdom of the East met the curiosity of the West. From Egypt came builders and stargazers, from Lydia, merchants, from Babylon, scholars of the heavens. And among them walked the first philosophers, men who sought not the will of gods, but the nature of what is. Thales, the elder of Miletus, had once declared that all things come from water. Anaximander, his student, looked deeper still and spoke of the Apeiron, the boundless, the infinite. And then came Anaximenes, the youngest of the three, walking the same sunlit shores, listening not only to the sea, but to the breath of the wind that moved above it. He would stand, they said, on the cliffs at dawn, watching the air shimmer as it met the rising sun. Here, he would whisper, is the hidden thread that joins all things. For the air was everywhere. It surrounded the world, it filled the lungs of men, it fed the fire, stirred the sea, and shaped the clouds. It was motion and rest, invisible yet felt, humble yet divine. To understand his thought, imagine that you are there now, the sand cool beneath your feet, the scent of salt and cedar on the breeze. The cries of distant gulls fade into the steady hush of the waves. You breathe in deeply, and the air fills you with the same rhythm that moves the world around you. In those early days, the people of Miletus lived close to the elements. The sea gave them food, the wind filled their sails, the earth yielded their crops, and the sun marked their days. Yet it was air, unseen, intangible, that held it all together. Anaximenes saw that to live wisely, one must live in harmony with what cannot be grasped by the hand but can be felt by the soul. He watched how the air could shift in form, cool and clear one moment, heavy and wet the next, pressing down with rain or lifting into the brightness of flame. To him, this was no accident. It was the key to all transformation. The air could become everything by changing its thickness or thinness. When it expanded, it turned to fire. When it condensed, it became water, then earth, then stone. And so he said, just as our breath holds us, so too breath holds the world. I often think how quiet Miletus must have been in the moments before dawn. Only the whisper of wind moving through the narrow streets, the sigh of the waves against the docks. In that stillness, the great question of the world hung in the air. What is the essence of all things? And perhaps that is why wisdom so often begins in silence. The sea spoke not in words but in rhythm, the same rhythm found in the rise and fall of the chest. It was there that Anaximenes listened and learned, not from temples or scrolls, but from the living breath of the world itself. As you rest and listen tonight, imagine that you too are walking through that city by the sea. You hear the hum of markets, the calls of sailors, the distant laughter of children. Above it all, the wind stirs, timeless, unseen, eternal. And in that moment, as the air brushes your face, you understand what Anaximenes once felt. That life itself is a single, endless breath, inhaling, exhaling, shaping the sky, the sea, and the soul alike. So breathe softly now. Let the air remind you that you are part of something vast and ancient, something that has never ceased since the first dawn. The same air that moved through Miletus moves through you. And in that breath, the story continues. When one looks back upon the early seekers of truth, it feels as though they stood in a quiet procession, each one holding a small flame, passing it forward to the next. Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes, the three minds of Miletus, were such men. Their thoughts were not loud like soldiers' drums, nor proud like the boasting of kings. They were humble, patient, steady, as if wisdom itself moved from hand to hand in silence. Thales, the first, gazed upon the rivers and seas and said, "All is water." He saw the world as fluid, flowing and changing, yet always returning to itself. To him, water was the womb of existence, the giver of nourishment, the mirror of the heavens. Then came his student, Anaximander, who pondered even deeper. No single thing, he said, can give birth to all others. There must be something beyond them, the apeiron, the boundless. He spoke of an unseen source without shape or limit, eternal and ageless, from which all things arise and to which all return. And then quietly came Anaximenes, young, thoughtful, walking in the same streets of Miletus, breathing the same wind. But unlike his predecessors, he sought a bridge between the tangible and the infinite. He asked, what if the boundless has a form that we can still sense though we cannot grasp it? What if the divine is as near as the air we breathe? He chose air, not merely as a substance but as the living pulse of existence. It was something humble, all around, touching everyone yet noticed by few. To the people of his city, air was nothing. To Anaximenes, it was everything. Air is infinite, he said, and ever in motion. By its changes all things come to be. He saw in the breath of man the echo of the world's breath, in the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling, the endless dance of creation and return. To him there was no divide between man and nature. Both were the same movement in different forms. When I first heard of this, I smiled, for it is much like what I later learned in my own way, that the soul, invisible and unseen, shapes the visible life we live. Anaximenes had sensed this long before my time, that the seen and unseen are one, and that what sustains the body sustains the cosmos too. Imagine him standing with Thales and Anaximander beneath a sky of slow-turning stars. The elder speaks of water, another answers with the boundless, and the youngest breathes deeply and says, "It is air." 3 thoughts, 3 paths, yet one shared longing to understand the order behind all things. These men were not called philosophers then. They were simply friends of wisdom. They did not claim to possess truth. They sought it as one might seek a spring in the desert. And each, in his own way, brought the world closer to knowing itself. You see, the wisdom of Anaximenes did not rise from pride but from simplicity. He looked not for grand explanations, but for what was already within reach. For what could be more ordinary than air, and what could be more divine? When I think of him, I am reminded that truth often hides in plain sight. Men search far for miracles, but the miracle is already around them, in the breath, in the sky, in the quiet moment between thoughts. So as you rest, imagine the 3 of them, Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes, sitting together on a stone terrace overlooking the Aegean. The wind moves through their hair, and they fall silent, realizing that perhaps the truest teacher is not among them, but moving invisibly between them. And in that stillness, they understood something eternal, that every thought, like every breath, is part of one unbroken line. So too are we, my friend. The air that filled their lungs now fills yours. The same current of thought, the same wonder still moves through the ages, quiet, invisible, and alive. When Anaximenes spoke of air, he was not merely naming a thing, he was describing a living mystery. To him, air was not emptiness, nor a simple breeze that passed and was gone. It was the mother of all forms, the unseen foundation of everything that exists. He believed that just as the breath in a man sustains his life, so the breath of the cosmos, the boundless air, sustains the life of the universe itself. He would often sit in the open, beneath the moving clouds, and watch how the sky changed. One moment clear, the next veiled by soft whiteness, then darkened by storms that roared across the horizon. He saw how the air could take every shape, thin and fiery in the sun, heavy and cold in the rain, gentle in a morning breeze. To Anaximenes, this was no accident. It was the way of the world, the secret rhythm by which the unseen becomes seen. He said, when air is spread out and rare, it becomes fire. When it gathers and condenses, it becomes wind, then cloud, then water, then earth, and finally stone. In his quiet voice, he described how everything we touch and see is but air made visible in a different form. The mountains, the seas, the stars, all are born from the same invisible breath, thickened or thinned by eternal motion. As I grew older, I too came to love such simplicity. To look at the world and see that all things are one, merely wearing different faces. This is a wisdom greater than clever arguments. The world is not made of many strange substances, but of one essence in endless transformation. Imagine for a moment holding a handful of soil. Within it, says Anaximenes, lies the air, compacted, asleep, waiting to become cloud or flame again. The air you breathe now may once have been part of a river or a tree, or even the breath of another being long ago. And when you exhale, your breath joins the great current once more, traveling unseen through sky and leaf and wave. The beauty of this vision is its gentleness. It does not divide heaven and earth, body and spirit, man and nature. All are one breath, endlessly turning within itself. And this thought, so simple, so soft, brings peace to the mind that contemplates it. When Anaximenes walked among his people, they must have wondered at him. He speaks of air as divine, they said, as if the wind itself were a god. But he did not mean worship as the poets did. He meant reverence, the quiet understanding that what sustains us deserves our care. For if air is the soul of the world, then to live rightly is to live in harmony with it, to breathe, to act, to think in balance. He would remind his students, without breath there is no life, without air there is no world. Yet this truth, so vast, needs no temple or altar. It is known every moment we inhale. Sometimes, in the silence of evening, I sit as Anaximenes once did and feel the air move around me. It slips through my fingers, invisible yet present. I cannot see it, but I can sense its embrace, gentle, unbroken, eternal. I think then of how small we are, and yet how deeply we belong to everything that moves and breathes. So as you rest, let your breathing slow. Notice the quiet between each breath. That stillness is the same stillness that lies at the heart of all things. The pause between worlds, the balance between change and peace. Anaximenes taught that the cosmos itself is alive with this breath, that stars burn because of it, that clouds drift because of it, that our thoughts rise and fall like wind within the mind. And if you close your eyes, you may feel that same vast motion within yourself. For the air that fills you is not yours alone. It is the world's, shared by all things, flowing from the depths of the sea to the peaks of the mountains, through forests, over cities, across time itself. This, he said, is the nature of air, the eternal unity that binds all, the soft, unseen hand that shapes the living world. Anaximenes once said, as our soul, being air, holds us together, so breath and air encompass the whole world. When I first heard those words, I sat in silence for a long while. There was something so calm, so complete in them, as if in a single breath he had gathered the essence of all philosophy. You see, to him, air was not only the origin of matter, it was also the living spirit that moves through every being. Just as breath gives life to a man, so the vast air gives life to the cosmos. In every motion of the wind, in every drifting cloud, he sensed the pulse of a great soul, quiet, infinite, unbroken. I have often thought that when he spoke of this, he was not speaking only as a philosopher, but as a poet of nature. He saw the divine not in statues or altars, but in the invisible rhythm that passes through all things. To breathe, for Anaximenes, was to share in the life of the universe. He would say, the soul is nothing other than air shaped within us. When we breathe, the world breathes through us. And perhaps he was right, for have you not felt, in moments of deep stillness, that your breath is not yours alone? That when you inhale, you draw in the cool of the sea, the scent of faraway rain, the warmth of the sun itself. That when you exhale, your breath joins the air that feeds trees, fills the sky, and moves again through countless forms of life. To live with such awareness is to live gently. It is to know that you are not separate from the world, but part of its ceaseless breath. The same air that fills the lungs of a child will one day pass through the leaves of an olive tree, through the wings of a bird, through the wind that stirs a mountain peak. Nothing is lost. It merely changes, condenses, expands, and flows again. Anaximenes saw this, and in that scene he found peace. He did not fear death, for how could he fear returning to what he had always been a part of? To dissolve back into the boundless air was not an ending, but a homecoming. The body fades, yes, but the breath continues, unseen, eternal, free. I, too, have often spoken of the soul, not as something trapped, but as something that moves. I have said that the soul is harmony, that it finds virtue when it breathes in accord with the divine order. In this, I think Anaximenes and I would have smiled in agreement. For to breathe rightly is to live rightly. When we rush, our breath grows short. When we grow angry, it burns. When we fear, it trembles. But when we are calm, when we let thought and feeling find their balance, our breath becomes smooth and life itself becomes gentle. Try even now to notice this within yourself. Draw in the air slowly. Feel it cool your chest. Let it leave softly without force. In this simple rhythm lies the wisdom of ages. Anaximenes once told his pupils, "The air that holds the world together also holds your soul together. Care for it as you would your own heart." Perhaps he meant that to live in peace, one must live in reverence, not for distant gods, but for the living world that sustains us each moment. When I walk through Athens and feel the breeze move through the marketplace, I think of him. The same air that carried the sails of Miletus now touches the stones beneath my feet. It has passed through generations, whispering the same quiet truth, that life, mind, and matter are one great breath. So let this thought rest with you tonight, that every breath you take is a conversation with the universe. You receive what it gives, and you give what it receives. There is no separation, no loneliness, only the endless flow of life through life. Anaximenes understood this, and perhaps that is why his teaching feels more like a prayer than a theory. He spoke of air, but he meant spirit, and that spirit is here now, in every quiet motion of your breathing, holding you as gently as it holds the stars. There are forces in this world that no eye can see, yet without them nothing could exist. Anaximenes understood this deeply. To him, air was not only the substance of the world, but also the symbol of all that is unseen yet essential, the quiet power that moves the visible into being. He would tell his listeners, "We do not see the breath that warms us, yet we feel its gift. We cannot grasp the wind in our hands, yet it shapes the clouds, bends the trees, and fills the sails of every ship." So too, he believed, is the nature of truth. It cannot be held, yet it moves everything that is. As I grew in my own years of questioning, I came to see the same. The things that matter most, thought, love, courage, virtue, are invisible. You cannot weigh them, nor store them, nor trade them. Yet they are the breath of the soul, the quiet winds that guide the heart through life. Anaximenes looked upon the world and saw that all power is born from stillness. The storm begins in silence, the flame from a spark unseen, and even the mightiest sea wind starts as the softest stir of air. To understand life, he said, one must understand this gentle beginning, the invisible turning into the real. He would often walk along the fields outside Miletus, watching the grass move though no hand touched it. The children would laugh and run, pointing to the invisible fingers of wind that danced through the reeds. He would smile at them and say, "That is the breath of the world. It moves all things, yet it asks for nothing." I think often of that image, the unseen wind stirring the visible world. It is the same with our souls. We do not see thought, yet from it rise words and actions that change nations. We do not see virtue, yet from it comes harmony and peace. The unseen moves the seen always. When a craftsman builds a ship, he shapes wood and iron, but it is the wind, unseen, that will carry it. When a musician plucks the lyre, the strings tremble, but it is the air that becomes music. And when a man speaks with kindness, his words vanish into the air, yet they remain in the heart of another, unseen but eternal. Anaximenes taught that what we cannot see is not nothing. It is everything. The air within us gives strength to the body. The air around us gives form to the world. It changes from warmth to chill, from motion to rest, yet it never dies. And so too with the divine. It does not vanish when unseen, but lives quietly in the space between all things. This is why the wise man does not mock what he cannot see. He knows that the truest powers hide behind gentleness, the greatest truths behind silence. Think of your own life. The moments that shaped you most were not always loud or grand. Sometimes they came like a breath, a soft word, a silent forgiveness, a glance of understanding. These too are the invisible winds that shape a soul. Anaximenes believed that to know the air is to know the unseen harmony of the universe. To live by it is to move in rhythm with that harmony. We breathe, he said, because the world breathes. We live because the divine moves through us in stillness and motion alike. So as you lie here now, listening to the quiet of the night, remember, the greatest power surrounds you even now. You cannot see it, yet you are wrapped within it. The same air that once moved through Miletus, through forests, across seas, through the hearts of countless beings before you. Let that thought bring comfort. There is no need to reach for what you cannot see. It is already here, flowing through you, sustaining you, guiding you without command or effort. This was the lesson of Anaximenes, that the invisible does not mean the absent, that the unseen is not the unreal. It is the very breath of existence itself. And if you listen closely enough, you may hear it now, not as a sound but as a peace, the silent pulse of the air moving softly through the night, whispering, "You are part of me and I am part of you." When I think of Anaximenes, I imagine him standing beneath the open sky of Ionia, his robe stirred by a quiet wind, his gaze lifted to the drifting clouds. He was not a man of temples or scrolls. The heavens were his teacher, and the air his sacred text. Every breath of wind, every shimmer of light upon the horizon spoke to him of unity, the world breathing in and out like a living being. He often said that those who wish to understand must first look upward. For above us, the sky holds the purest truth. It changes and yet remains, it moves yet endures. In it, the play of all things, fire and water, calm and storm, day and night, unfolds endlessly, and still the great dome of air remains whole. I too have spent many nights watching the sky, not as a place of distant gods, but as a mirror of the soul. When I looked upon it, I saw that the clouds are like our thoughts, ever shifting, forming, dissolving. One moment heavy with shadow, the next light with brightness. And through them all shines the same quiet vastness, clear, patient, and eternal. Anaximenes would have smiled at this, I think. For to him, the sky was the visible face of air, the soul of the world spread out before the eyes of men. He saw divinity not above the heavens but within them. When he watched the clouds form and fade, he did not see chaos. He saw law, order, and breath, the living motion of the infinite. He would teach his students to watch the horizon at dawn. "Look," he would say, "how the air changes with the sun, cool and clear becomes warm and glowing. The breath of the world rises and falls as you do. What you witness is not separate from you, it is your own soul made vast." To him, the heavens were not distant or unreachable. They were part of us. The same air that fills our lungs fills the sky. Every gust of wind, every whisper of breeze that brushes the olive leaves is a reminder that we belong to the great movement of life. The people of Miletus, busy with trade and chatter, may not have noticed the quiet man who stood staring at the clouds for hours. Yet in his stillness he saw more than any merchant or sailor. He saw the invisible made visible, the soul of the world breathing across the blue. There is wisdom in looking upward, not to escape the earth but to remember its harmony. The sky teaches patience. It teaches impermanence. It teaches that even what drifts apart is never truly lost. The cloud that vanishes becomes the rain that nourishes the soil. The mist that fades becomes the air we breathe. Nothing ends, it merely changes form, as Anaximenes taught. Even now, when I sit at the edge of Athens and the day grows quiet, I find myself watching the evening light spread across the sky. The air softens, the sun turns gold, the first star appears. And I feel what Anaximenes must have felt, that we are never apart from the divine order of things. We are in it, carried within it as air within air. So let the sky be your teacher for a while. Look up in stillness and see how it moves without hurry, how it holds storm and calm alike. Let it remind you that within your own life, too, there is a vastness untouched by worry, a quiet expanse behind every thought, where peace lives like open sky. The sky that taught Anaximenes still teaches us now. Its lessons have not faded with time. It asks for nothing but your attention, your breath, your presence. And if you listen closely, in the hush between wind and silence, you may hear it speaking, not in words but in calm. As above, so within. The breath that moves the heavens moves you too. Anaximenes believed that all of life rests upon a single law, the balance of change. He said that nothing is ever lost and nothing truly begins. All things simply transform. The air that surrounds us becomes cloud, the cloud becomes rain, the rain becomes river and sea, and through the warmth of the sun, it becomes air again. The world, he said, is a circle of breath, expanding, contracting, forever breathing itself into new forms. When I first heard of this teaching, I found it to be not only a truth of nature but a truth of the soul. For we too are made of changes. Our thoughts rise and fade like clouds, our moods condense and dissolve, our lives flow from one form into another. To fear change is to fight the very rhythm of the cosmos. To understand it is to live in harmony with the way of all things. Anaximenes saw that when air becomes thin and light, it becomes fire. When it grows dense and heavy, it becomes water and earth. Rarefaction and condensation, two movements, opposite but equal, shape everything. He saw the world not as a battle of elements, but as a dance of opposites, each yielding, each returning, each completing the other. He would point to the sea and say, "Look how the waves rise and fall. They do not resist their own motion, yet the sea remains the same." In the same way, he taught that the universe remains whole even as its parts shift endlessly. I have found great comfort in this thought. When the heart grows heavy with sorrow, remember that even sorrow changes. When joy lifts the spirit, remember that it too will pass into stillness. But beneath both, Beneath the rise and fall of every feeling, there is something constant, like the calm air beneath the moving wind. That is the balance of life, and wisdom lies in keeping step with it. Anaximenes once told his followers, "What grows thin becomes warm, what grows thick becomes cold." The balance of the two gives birth to all. Though he spoke of air, he might as well have spoken of the human heart. For there too warmth and coolness meet, passion and calm, courage and humility. If one overcomes the other, we lose our harmony. To live rightly is to breathe with the rhythm of the world, not too quickly, not too slow. Just as fire consumes when uncontrolled and water drowns when unbalanced, so too can our emotions, if left untended, destroy our peace. But if we learn to flow with them, to let them rise and settle like air moving through the seasons, then we live as nature intended, balanced, breathing, alive. There is wisdom in the ordinary, in the way day turns to night without struggle, in how the seed becomes flower, the flower becomes fruit, the fruit becomes soil again. All things change, yet the essence endures. So too the breath of the world moves through you, shifting, softening, never ceasing. Once a student asked Anaximenes, "Master, if everything changes, what can we hold on to?" He smiled and answered, "Hold on to the change itself, for it is the breath of life." And how right he was. To resist change is to hold your breath, and no man can live long doing so. But to accept it, to breathe through it, is to join the eternal rhythm of the cosmos. As you rest tonight, feel that rhythm within you, the rise and fall of your breath, the warmth as it enters, the coolness as it leaves. That simple motion is the same motion that moves the stars and the tides. You are not apart from the universe. You are its breathing made small, its harmony made human. So when you next face change, remember this teaching of Anaximenes. The world does not end or begin, it transforms. The storm that shakes the sea is the same sea that rests in calm. And within you the same truth abides. What you are now will soften, what is lost will return, and what breathes will always continue. For in the balance of change lies the quiet perfection of all things. There comes a time when a man sits long enough in stillness that he begins to feel what Anaximenes felt, that everything is one. The air that passes through your lungs is the same air that moves through the forests, through the waves, through the clouds that drift across the night sky. What separates us from the stars, from the rivers, from one another, is only form, not essence. Anaximenes taught that everything in the world is born of the same living breath, merely taking different shapes for a time. He said, "Air is one, yet by thickening and thinning, it becomes the many." That is, the stone and the flame, the sea and the wind, the body and the soul, all are expressions of the same unseen source. I have pondered that truth often. It humbles a man. For when you see that all things share one life, pride fades. You cannot despise what you are part of, nor raise yourself above what sustains you. The beggar and the king, the dove and the storm, all move in the same current of being. To understand this unity is to feel peace. For when you realize that you and the world are not two, the need to conquer or possess dissolves. You see that every harm you give returns to you as surely as the wind that circles the earth. You begin to live gently, to speak softly, to breathe with care. Anaximenes' vision was not grand like the myths of gods on mountains. It was simple and in its simplicity divine. He did not say that man must reach for heaven. He said heaven is already here, in the air around us, in the breath within us. There is no place where the divine ends and the mortal begins. They are one continuum, like the calm and the storm, like silence and sound. I sometimes wonder if he stood upon a hill one evening, watching the sunset spill its light over Miletus, and felt that same still joy, the kind that needs no reason. Perhaps he watched the children running by, their laughter carried by the wind, and thought, even this sound is part of the same great breath that moves the stars. When I speak of virtue to my own students, I tell them that it begins with understanding. A man cannot live justly if he believes himself apart from the world. He must know that his soul is woven from the same thread as all souls. The harm he gives to another, he gives to himself. The kindness he offers another, he offers to the universe. This is why the wise do not boast, nor seek to divide, nor say, "This is mine and that is yours." They see the futility of such illusions. For how can you own what is already shared? How can you separate the breath that moves through all? Anaximenes' unity is not cold or distant, it is intimate. It reminds us that every act, every thought, ripples outward through the same living field. When you breathe gently, you soothe not only yourself but the whole of existence. When you live with care, the air itself seems to respond, calmer, kinder, clearer. In this unity there is also forgiveness. For if all things are one, then every error is only a momentary confusion in the great harmony, a cloud passing before the sun. The sky does not punish the cloud, it lets it drift and dissolve. So too, the wise man forgives, for he knows that others are himself in another form, struggling toward the same peace. Sometimes, when the night is deep and quiet, I close my eyes and feel this truth, that the air around me and the soul within me are not two. They are one endless breath. I am the world breathing, and the world is me breathing. Let this thought rest within you tonight. You are not a fragment, nor a stranger here. The same air that moves through the distant stars moves through your chest now. The same breath that shaped the mountains whispers softly through your dreams. In this unity there is no fear, no loss, no end, only the endless motion of life returning to itself. There is a kind of wisdom that does not shout. It does not dazzle with clever words, nor hide behind complexity. It lives quietly, like the soft movement of air over calm water. Anaximenes' thought was of that kind, simple, unhurried, yet filled with endless depth. He did not seek to confound men with riddles as many thinkers do. He looked at what was plain before all eyes and said, "Here is the divine." While others chased the mysteries of distant heavens, he watched the wind move through the leaves and found there the answer to what sustains the world. In his simplicity there was no poverty of mind. There was richness, the kind that only comes when one no longer needs to prove or possess. He taught that truth need not be far away. It lives in what we breathe, in what we touch, in what we overlook because it is too close. I have often told my students that knowledge is not the piling of thoughts upon thoughts, but the clearing away of confusion until what remains is clear and pure. That is what Anaximenes practiced long before me. He peeled back the noise of superstition and saw the simple living core of all things. Air, invisible, essential, one. He showed that wisdom is not found by escaping the ordinary, but by looking deeply into it. The philosopher and the child both breathe the same air. The difference is that the philosopher finally realizes it. There is a story told in Miletus, that once, when a proud man mocked Anaximenes for calling air divine, he smiled and asked the man to hold his breath. After a moment, the man's face grew red and his chest tight. Then Anaximenes said, "Now you see, what you took for nothing is your very life." I love that story for it reveals the beauty of his teaching. He did not argue, he showed. He led men back to the truth that had never left them. The world does not need to be invented. It only needs to be seen. So often men seek greatness in noise and size. They build vast temples, carve high statues, pile words upon words, and yet they overlook the quiet wonder that holds them all. The truth is not in the thunder, it is in the air that carries its sound. To live simply is to live wisely. To breathe without hurry, to see without judgment, to move without striving, that is to be in harmony with what is. The universe asks for no ornaments, no excess. It needs only that you be present as the air is present, soft, unbound, giving life without demand. Anaximenes' truth, though spoken 2,000 years before my own time, still humbles me. For in all my questioning, I have never found a clearer mirror of virtue. His simplicity was not ignorance, it was purity, the kind of clarity that comes when the heart and the mind are still enough to see the world as it is. He did not call himself wise nor seek followers. He simply lived in awareness. And in that awareness he found more than kings or poets ever did. I sometimes wonder if, in the quiet of evening, as the air cooled and the sun turned gold over the sea, Anaximenes would pause in his thought, close his eyes, and simply breathe, content in knowing that the mystery he sought was already flowing through him. Perhaps that is all any of us truly need to remember. That truth, like air, is not hidden. It is here, waiting in every moment of stillness, simple and complete. So as you rest, let your thoughts fall silent. Let the air remind you of how little is needed to live, and how much peace lies in the simplest things. You are breathing now, and that, my friend, is proof enough of the divine. When I speak of Anaximenes, I often find myself listening to the wind, for it seems to echo his voice. The wind is a teacher that speaks without words. It comes softly when you are still, fiercely when you are proud, and always it reminds you that power can exist in silence. The people of Miletus, I imagine, must have known the wind well. Their city, open to the sea, felt its moods daily, the cool breath of morning, the salt wind of the afternoon, the quiet whisper before dusk. And there, amid the rhythm of tides and gusts, Anaximenes found meaning. To him, the wind was the world's thought made visible, the movement of air revealing the unseen mind of the cosmos. He would tell his companions, "Watch the wind, for in it you will find your own reflection. When it is gentle, life moves with grace. When it is wild, we must learn not to resist but to bend. The sailor who fights the storm perishes. The one who understands the wind lives by its will. So too is it with our souls. Our thoughts and emotions are like gusts, sometimes fierce, sometimes still. Wisdom is not to stop the wind, but to know its nature and move with it. When anger rises, it is a storm of air within. When peace returns, it is the calm that follows. The wise man learns to steer his vessel by observing the invisible currents that pass through him. I have often walked through the streets of Athens when the wind stirs the dust and the linen awnings above the shops begin to flap. The merchants curse, the travelers hurry, but I smile. For in that sound, the invisible hand brushing through the city, I hear the same lesson that Anaximenes heard, that we are surrounded, shaped, and sustained by what we cannot see. The wind moves the clouds and cools the earth, yet no one commands it. It obeys only its own law, flowing from where it is dense to where it is thin, always seeking balance. This too is how the soul must live, not clinging to one state, not resisting motion, but flowing naturally toward harmony. Anaximenes would say that the wind teaches humility. For though men build walls and ships, temples and towers, a single breath of the world can move them all. And yet that same wind gives life. Without it, no fire burns, no sail moves, no creature breathes. It destroys only when we forget to move with it. There is also kindness in the wind, the way it cools the weary traveler, carries the seeds of trees to new soil, and lifts the wings of birds without ever being seen. Power and gentleness dwell in the same unseen hand. Perhaps that is why Anaximenes found divinity in air. For the divine, too, is both strength and tenderness, ungraspable yet always near. When I stand upon the hills outside the city and feel the wind brush past me, I do not resist it. I close my eyes and it feels as though the world itself is breathing through me. I am no longer separate from it. I am part of its endless motion. If you listen closely now, you may feel the same. The faint stir of air against your skin, the rhythm of your breath rising and falling, these are not small things. They are the same forces that move the seas and shape the stars. The wind does not ask for recognition. It gives without being seen. In that, it teaches us how to live, to move gently, to touch everything without harming it, to pass through life as softly as air through leaves. So tonight, as the room grows still, imagine the wind of Miletus drifting through your window, carrying the voice of Anaximenes across centuries. Let it remind you that peace does not come from control, but from trust. The trust that the same breath that stirs the world also guides your own. Breathe with it. Be as it is, free, balanced, unseen, yet full of quiet strength. For in every breath of wind, the soul of the world speaks. The story of wisdom is not written in stone. It is breathed from soul to soul, carried on the invisible wind of time. I have always believed that knowledge is like the air itself. It passes through each of us, unseen yet eternal, connecting every generation to those who came before. Anaximenes was not alone in his seeking. He was the third link in a golden chain, a chain that began with Thales, strengthened by Anaximander, and lived on through him. Thales taught that water was the origin. Anaximander said it was the boundless, and Anaximenes, standing between the tangible and the infinite, declared it was the air. Each one carried the breath of the last, shaping it, softening it, letting it flow forward. When I think of these men, I see not rivals but friends of truth. Each one saw the world through his own window, and though the view changed, the light was the same. They lived far before my time, yet I feel their presence, not as distant ghosts, but as living voices in the great conversation of the soul. It is said that Anaximenes would often speak of his teacher, Anaximander, with deep respect. He found the infinite, he would say, and I have sought to give it breath. For that was his gift, to give motion and spirit to the boundless idea, to make the unseen tangible through the simple, sacred act of breathing. And so it has always been. Every mind that seeks truth inhales the thought of another and breathes it anew. What I learned from my teacher Plato was not his conclusions, but his questions, the breath of inquiry itself. And he, in turn, received his from me. In this way, knowledge moves like the wind, invisible, continuous, passed on without ever being owned. Sometimes I wonder whether wisdom is ever truly born, or if it is simply awakened, stirred like air by those who listen deeply enough. The truth is never created, it is remembered. It is the same air we all breathe, taken in at different times in different places, yet always the same. The people of Miletus, perhaps without realizing it, had birthed the beginning of philosophy itself. They had moved thought away from myth and toward reason. And yet they did not reject the sacred. They simply found it within the world itself. The divine was not in far-off heavens, but in water, in air, in the breath of all things. That was their great revelation, that the universe itself is alive, and to know it, we must learn to breathe with it. In this lineage I find humility, for no man owns wisdom. We are all, at best, guardians of a single moment in its long journey. The thoughts that I call my own will one day be carried onward, reshaped, renewed, as Anaximenes' words have reached me now through the ages. So, if ever you seek to learn, do not cling to names or pride. Be as air is, taking shape where needed, yielding when passed through, never holding, never still. Let wisdom move through you as it moved through Thales, through Anaximander, through Anaximenes, and through every teacher and seeker that has ever lived. For we are all students in the same eternal school, sitting beneath the same sky, listening to the same whisper of truth, the whisper that passes from one breath to another. It comforts me to think that somewhere beyond time we are all gathered, Thales by his waters, Anaximander in his boundless stillness, Anaximenes beneath his sky, and I among them, each listening, each breathing, each sharing the same air of understanding. This, I believe, is the true immortality of wisdom, not that it is written, but that it is breathed, not that it endures in marble or ink, but that it continues, alive, in the hearts of those who listen. So breathe, my friend. You too are part of this lineage. Every thought you hold, every kindness you share becomes the next breath of the world. The chain of teachers has never been broken. It is the wind itself, moving from mind to mind, soul to soul, forever. There is a point in every seeker's journey when words begin to fade, and silence takes their place. Anaximenes understood this, though he spoke simply and clearly. The greatest truths, he believed, are not shouted in the marketplace, but heard in stillness, like the quiet air that moves unseen through the spaces between sound. I have known that same quiet, sitting alone beneath the open sky. The mind, when it grows calm enough, begins to listen differently. It stops demanding answers and starts hearing harmony. That, I think, is what Anaximenes found when he watched the clouds drift. Not argument, not proof, but understanding. In silence, the world speaks its own language. The air moves without need of command, the sea breathes without instruction, and even the stars turn in perfect rhythm, though no voice calls their names. To see this, to feel it, is to know what cannot be taught. The people of Miletus would sometimes ask Anaximenes to explain his ideas. "What do you mean," they said, "that air becomes all things?" And he would smile softly, pointing upward. "Look," he would say, "and breathe." There, in that gesture, all was said. When I think of him now, I imagine him sitting upon a hill at dusk, the world around him falling quiet, only the wind moving gently through the grass. In that soundless moment, he was perhaps closer to truth than in any argument or scroll. Silence is not the absence of thought, it is the presence of clarity. It is the point where the mind stops grasping and begins seeing. When the air is still, the lake reflects the sky perfectly. When the soul is still, it reflects truth in the same way. Many come to me asking for wisdom as if it were a thing to possess. But wisdom cannot be held, it can only be entered. And to enter it, one must become quiet, so quiet that even the faintest whisper of the world's breath can be heard. Anaximenes found that breath everywhere. In the shifting air, he saw the invisible order that binds the cosmos. He realized that silence itself is filled with the same air that sustains life, filled with the same mystery that moves all things. It is not emptiness, it is completion. There were moments, even in my own life, when words failed me, when the questions I asked dissolved into wonder. I remember standing in the agora as the sun set behind the Acropolis, feeling the warmth fade and the cool air rise. No argument could describe that peace. It was not something to explain but to feel. This is what the ancients meant when they spoke of the harmony of the world. Not a sound we can hear, but a silence we can sense. A stillness in which everything moves together without conflict, each thing breathing in its own way, yet all sharing one great breath. So let us be silent for a while as Anaximenes was. Let us not hurry to name what cannot be named. Instead, breathe and let the air move through you. In that simple act, you will feel what he felt, that the divine is not distant but always here, quiet as your own breathing, constant as the space between heartbeats. If you listen closely enough, you may notice that silence itself has a sound. The faint hum of being, the steady rhythm of existence continuing without your effort or command. That is the music Anaximenes heard in the still air. And that is the secret that no words can hold. When you stop seeking, you begin to see. When you stop speaking, you begin to understand. When you stop grasping, you begin to feel that you are already part of everything you were trying to reach. So rest now. Let silence surround you as it surrounded the sages. Let your thoughts drift away like clouds dissolving in a clear sky. For in this quiet, in this soft, endless breath, the whole universe reveals itself. Now, my friend, let us turn inward. For all that Anaximenes taught about the air that moves the world, his greatest lesson lies not in the sky above us but in the breath within us. He said that the soul is air, that our life is the world itself drawn into the body. When we breathe, we do not merely sustain flesh and bone. We participate in the rhythm of existence. The air we take in is the same that moves the seas, feeds the fire, and carries the songs of birds across the fields. The same breath that stirs the stars fills your chest at this very moment. Close your eyes and let your awareness settle upon this truth. Inhale softly, feel the coolness as it enters, the quiet expansion of the chest, the gentle pause before release. Then exhale slowly, feel how peace follows as the air leaves. This simple movement, rising and falling, is the ancient pulse of life. It connects you to all that has ever been, to all that ever will be. Anaximenes once told his students, "When you breathe, you draw in the world. When you exhale, you give yourself back to it." He meant that we are not guests in this world but part of its living body, that our every breath is both a taking and a giving, a harmony of being. I've thought long on those words. They carry the quiet truth that the divine is not something we must reach. It is already flowing through us, as close as the air upon our lips. There is no separation between the human and the infinite. We breathe the same breath as the heavens. When you are troubled, notice how your breath tightens, how it grows short and sharp. The mind mirrors the air within. But when you are calm, the breath softens, wide, unbroken, patient. To master the breath, then, is to master the soul. And in this, Anaximenes found a philosophy of peace long before men spoke of such things. He did not call for prayer, nor sacrifice, nor temple walls. He simply asked men to breathe, to feel what is always there, sustaining, forgiving, eternal. Through the breath, he found divinity everywhere. In the still dawn, in the quiet sea, in the living hearts of men. I have seen this truth myself. When I sit with my students in the stoa and the wind moves gently through the columns, there comes a moment when no one speaks, when we simply listen to the soft sound of the breeze. In that moment, the separation between teacher and pupil, between thinker and world, disappears. There is only one breath, shared, endless. Perhaps this is what Anaximenes meant by wisdom. Not to know more, but to feel the unity of all things in the simplest act of living. To breathe is to know. To breathe is to belong. To breathe is to remember that you are never apart from the world you seek to understand. So as you lie here now, let your breathing become your meditation. Each inhalation draws in the life of the world. Each exhalation releases gratitude back into it. You are both the receiver and the giver, the question and the answer, the silence and the song. Even in the darkest night, this truth remains. The air still moves through you, soft and unseen, reminding you that life endures quietly beneath every thought and fear. You need not seek eternity, you are breathing it. This, I think, is the gift Anaximenes left to all who would listen, that the sacred is not beyond reach but already within us, woven into the rhythm of our breath. So breathe, my friend. Breathe and know. Each moment you inhale, the universe enters you. Each moment you exhale, you return yourself to it. There is no border, no distance, only the soft exchange between the soul and the world, one endless breath shared forever.